want to lose, maybe shed a couple pounds, especially as, we get older. It gets tougher, but they've got programs and products and people that can get you going in the right direction. You can also sit down with their experienced staff and talk about rejuvenation, PRP, hair removal, Botox, and also hormone therapy. Maybe you've been feeling off lately. You just haven't been feeling yourself, and you're like, what's going on? Get your levels checked. Maybe they've dipped. Maybe they've dipped to an all-time low, which could affect, your mood, could affect your drive, your energy, or you just feeling normal these days. But you can discuss BHRT, testosterone, estrogen. They do it all, and they do it all under one roof. If you need to schedule an appointment or a consultation, dial this number, 615-283-7291. That's 283-7291. Or you can always go to their website and learn everything about them. And all you have to do is go to coolspringsmd.com. Keep this in mind because us here at the ESPN 102.5 The Game and the Nashville Predators are really looking forward to 615 Day Celebration, which is just around the corner. That'll be, what's today, the 9th? So that'll be on Tuesday, presented by Social Furniture. And it'll be at the Fordyce Center in Bellevue, benefiting the Boys and Girls Clubs of Middle Tennessee. Like I said, that'll be on Tuesday. It's going to be a 12-hour window from 6 in the morning until 6 p.m. Of course, that's during all of our live shows. And we will be broadcasting live from the Fordyce Center in Bellevue. So we'll be in Chase's backyard. Fans will have multiple opportunities to take to the ice during the donations based on public skate sessions. Draft pick restaurant and bar will also be open all day. Outside from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. The Fordyce Center's in Bellevue parking lot will be overflowing with food and beverage options, including Hunt Brothers, Coke and Dr. Pepper, as well as face painting, PDK, a photo booth, music. Do you get the picture? This is going to be a big deal. And all this to benefit the Boys and Girls Clubs of Middle Tennessee. So keep that in mind on Tuesday. And don't forget the Nashville Predators Foundation, empowered by Smile Direct Club, is running a silent auction during that 12-hour window, which will start where you can text in Preds to 76278 to start bidding on really, really cool stuff. So for more details, go to thegamenashville.com/615days. So we're looking forward to that on Tuesday. Boy, we have had a loaded show. Tony Vitello kicked things off in the first hour, Vols baseball coach. Willie's going to go a little bit more in depth in the final hour about the other super regional in this state, and that'll be right here in the backyard over on West End as the Vanderbilt host East Carolina. So we talked about Tennessee and LSU in the first hour, Vanderbilt and East Carolina coming up in the final hour, so good stuff there. Also, John Robinson joined us in the second hour, Titans general manager, and then you just heard from forever Titans wide receiver Chris Sanders and from Tim Hasselbeck this hour. So we have been popping through the big topics here on today's show. So I brought this up, Willie, as we headed to the break, that Pro Football Focus put out there. Top 6 head coaches in the NFL going into this season. And I want to see if you can figure out how they ranked them.
Well,
who's on that list and how they ranked them.
My first question is, it's Pro Football Focus, so this seems to me to be something that is not super subjective. Whereas, like, if it's you, me, and Chase, we all might completely have different criteria on how we judge that. Pro Football Focus is a numbers-based analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So this is I'm more curious about this than I would be if it's Joe Football on football.com has his take. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like, this is I'm curious about this. So this is a total guess for me, but I mean, I'm going to start with Andy Reid. I think he's got to be on there.
I think that's a really good guess, and that is number 1 on their list. So Andy Reid is number 1 on Pro Football's Focus of head coaches, top head coaches in the NFL heading into the 2021 season. So Andy Reid, number 1.
Is this based on what happened last year or their whole careers?
I don't know the criteria.
It's not just based on last year's numbers.
No, I literally just saw this while we were at the end of when we were talking to Tim. So I don't know the details of how they came up with this. What's it based on? I don't know.
All right, so let me just throw one out there and test the theory, and that would be Bill Belichick. They didn't have a good year, but I think he's a great coach.
Bill Belichick is on the list at number 6.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's certainly not just based on wins and losses from last year.
Correct.
If that's the case.
But still, can you imagine a list of any sorts that has Bill Belichick of NFL head coaches at number 6?
Interesting. I will take the low-hanging fruit. I would guess our listening audience will be curious if Mike Vrabel is on the list, so let me throw him out there.
Very good guess. And I was very curious to see where he would fall in line with this top 6. and he is not on the list.
Not in the top 6.
How about that?
Okay. How about Frank Reich?
Frank Reich, not on the list.
All right. Well, Bruce Arians won a Super Bowl last year, so let's throw him out there.
Boy, you're coming up with some really good guesses. And Bruce Arians is not on the list.
So it can't just be based on last year then.
Yep.
How about John Harbaugh?
John Harbaugh is number 2 on the list.
I think that's a worthy guy. So this tells me this is consistency over time. Something to that.
Reed 1, John Harbaugh 2, Bill Belichick 6.
How about Pete Carroll?
Pete Carroll is a really good guess, and he is not on the list.
Now that surprises me.
Oh yeah, well there's a reason I'm bringing it up because I think we can certainly discuss.
Okay, Mike Tomlin.
Mike Tomlin is a really good guess, not on the list.
I got to know what the criteria is.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to go on and let the cat out of the bag and give you this hint, and this may steer you there. I just think we need to know the criteria because I don't understand, like, number 3. Like, I don't think all the guys you just named and
how many wins they have.
This coach is at 3.
Okay, so
it's Matt LaFleur at 3.
Okay, well, he hasn't been doing it very long, but his won-loss record's pretty good.
Right, but I mean, look, nothing against Matt, right? I mean, he's a great guy. We love dealing with him the 1 year he was here. And I get it. They've won, 13 games both years? He's been the head coach. Okay, that's fantastic. Been in the playoffs, made deep runs, but
they got
everybody knows they have the best quarterback in the league. So, I mean, Matt LaFleur. I mean, think about Mike Tomlin, Pete Carroll. Think about those guys.
Well, they've been doing it a lot longer. So that's what I'm wondering.
Like, how could he possibly be in front of those guys? And then even Frank Reich and Mike Vrabel. I mean, I think you could sit there and go, okay, let's start. I don't know. I was a lot surprised to see Matt LaFleur at 3. Sean McDermott. We just talked a lot about the Bills.
Okay.
With Tim. Sean McDermott is at 4, and Sean Payton is at 5.
Okay. So you have a mix of guys who have been doing it a long time and then a couple of new guys who have had recent success. So, I'd like to read into it. I do not subscribe to Pro Football Focus, but we're familiar with the concept, right? It's analysis of film. They give out grades. Is this based on what they feel like these coaches had to work with and getting the most out of the talent? I don't know. But I think you could do a number of these different things and you might get a lot of different answers on that. But we were just talking to Tim Hasselbeck about Aaron Rodgers. What does Aaron Rodgers think of Matt LaFleur?
I don't get the feeling or a vibe from afar that there's any issues like there was with the previous head coach. It was very clear. Like McCarthy, there was real issues with him and Aaron Rodgers that they were not seeing eye to eye. But I don't get that feeling with Matt LaFleur. They won a Super Bowl
together, though. So that
that was very early on. That was a long time ago.
And things can change over time. But early on, I thought it was. Remember, they didn't get off to the greatest start when LaFleur took over, and it's gotten considerably better since then. Two championship game losses. It's as much. It's close to as much success as you can have without winning the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. So
LaFleur gets this really good ranking, but you have a really angry quarterback who doesn't really want to be there. So it's another thing that just baffles me about Aaron Rodgers is the decisions he's making right now are affecting a lot of people around him. And I can't imagine he doesn't care about a lot of those people, meaning his teammates, the coaches, the fans, all of that stuff that are involved with the Packers. And he's making this one, from what I can tell, this one beef that he's got with the one guy, it's superseding everything else that's going on with him.
that's why you do wonder, like, what's really happened? Because this is not just a little riff or a little tiff, a little, just a little. They're a little sideways. No. It goes way deeper than that. So what really is it? Because I just don't get the feeling that there's any issues between the head coach and the quarterback. That this is all about the general manager, and I don't know if he peed in his Wheaties. I don't know what happened. Hit on his girlfriend. I don't know, but this is more than just, he didn't talk to me or he drafted Jordan Love. This is a pretty deep cut. Aaron Rodgers is dug in. Now, Tim Hasselbeck just told us he believes he'll be under center versus the Saints week 1. I don't know if I truly believe that, because it looks like I said, Aaron Rodgers is dug in. I don't know what would change unless the GM gets fired, because it does not feel like they're going to be patching things up or going to dinner to smooth things over anytime soon. I don't believe the GM showing up to Aaron Rodgers' house with cake and ice cream like that just happened to me. I don't believe that's going to happen. I don't know how it got to that point, but something really, really bad to me happened behind the scenes, because to get to the level of where you can see the discord with Aaron Rodgers and that general manager, it's not just one thing. It's something really that cut is deep. It needs more than stitches, I think. It's definitely not going to be a Band-Aid. It's going to need stitches and even some more care, probably some medication. That's a deep cut.
And, of course, on the other side of the coin, again, this is me shooting from Nashville, Tennessee,
right.
Never been to Green Bay, not a Packers fan, don't know any of these people behind the scenes, but if it's as simple as the guy's got a beef with the GM, is the guy that good of a GM that you wouldn't say, hey, let's get a new GM? Let's bring a new guy in there.
Well, if it really is just, hey, it's
one
blank
guy?
Cutting time, and I'll let everybody – it's blank cutting time, you or him, I mean, who's kidding who?
All right. I mean, I'd feel bad for the guy if I'm in charge of the Packers Trust. I don't know how that works. Like, they're a publicly owned team, but it's like, hey, man, our stock, we got a lot of stock in this quarterback. Somebody gets unfairly punished because he's not getting along with the superstar. It wouldn't be the first time that's happened in a lot of different places.
If it gets to that point in all this, they're going to be like, hey, look out your window. Those boxes out in the parking lot by your car, that's your office. Okay, so thanks. See you later. I mean,
but that makes me wonder.
Nobody's
if
choosing him over the quarterback.
But yeah, so why hasn't that even been? I don't hear people discussing that. People that are closer to the situation would know better than me. But this just seems so crazy to me.
So of that group that you named, which I think are all worthy candidates, who's your 6? Who would you have in there that they didn't? I just think like McDermott, I don't have an issue with. Sean Payton, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I think you got to go with Sean Payton.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But I think just to me, the one that just really sticks out is LaFleur. That's the one that's like, no, probably not on this list.
But just because he hasn't done it that long?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you going to put Matt LaFleur in there on a list over Pete Carroll? Or Mike Tomlin?
Yeah,
I'm not. No way.
So something is based not on longevity.
Okay, so how about the guys who've done it about the same amount of time? So how would you rank Frank Reich, Mike Vrabel, and Matt LaFleur?
They're
all in the same window, right? Those
good,
three in their same window. So
they all became head coaches close to the same time. Mm-hmm. Of course, LaFleur was on Vrabel's staff. I think they're all really good head coaches. I ranking them.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know.
Well, Vrabel's been in the seat a little bit longer, so I think you got to give him some credit for that. He's had to do some building.
Frank Reich has too at Indy, and quite
Frank
honestly,
Reich's
so did LaFleur.
There. Frank Reich got the job same year as LaFleur, right? Aren't they both going into their third year? Whereas Vrabel's going into his, 4th or 5th?
Mm-hmm. 4th, I think.
Boy, how would you separate them? Do you have a clear-cut choice? For one, I give Vrabel maybe a slight edge because he's been there a little bit longer.
Reich has been there. So this is year 4 for Reich.
Oh, it's year 4 for Reich.
This is year 4.
And it's year 4 for...
He went 10-6, lost to Kansas City in the divisional game, went 7-9, no playoffs, 11-5, lost to the Bills in the wild card game. That's his 3 seasons.
And has had to oversee a very tough break, and that is, the quarterback he thought he was going to have.
And that was, of course, the 7-9.
Retired,
right, that was the 7-9
so
season.
that gives him a lot of, I think that's adversity. You got to deal with adversity when you're a coach. That's a lot of adversity. He's done pretty well in that.
So Mike Vrabel, 3 years. This is year 4 for him as well. 9-7 the first year, no playoffs. 9-7 the second year, lost to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. And then 11-5, won the division, lost to the Ravens in the wild card game. So,
but
basically
if you just go by won and lost results, then LaFleur has got to be up there, but he's also played a different hand than the other 2 guys, right? Vrabel had to try to figure out the whole Mariota thing. Then he makes the most of having Tannehill. He had the crisis last year with the COVID, overcame that, overcame a brutal defense, and still found a way to win a division. So many different ways you can grade a coach, right? Matt LaFleur didn't have to necessarily deal with some of those things. He inherits a team that's got one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's different than Frank Reich, who comes in, and after a year of Andrew Luck, he doesn't have Andrew Luck.
He's got Jacoby Brissett, and Mike Vrabel's got Marcus Mariota. That's what he inherited. I mean, just think about that.
So you can't just base it on the end wins and losses. That's why we have this discussion about John Hines right? Each coach is dealt a different hand, and you have to kind of look through just the end-up results and say, okay, what kind of hand did the guy have?
Mm-hmm.
How successful is he supposed to be with what he's got? Same thing with a baseball manager. So football coach is the same thing.
Let's go to our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Doug has been waiting patiently. What's up?
Hey, guys. Yeah, on this Aaron Rodgers thing, I really think Green Bay made a huge mistake, when you take a look at Tom Brady and what New England did when they traded Jimmy Garoppolo. They were catering to Brady at the time, right? And when you have a superstar like that, sometimes they are bigger than life and more important than the GM. I mean, I remember the night when the Packers drafted Love. I'm like, they needed to get Aaron Rodgers weapons, and they decided not to do it. I watched what Buffalo did when they went out and got Diggs, and they gave up a first-round draft choice. But they had to give this Josh Allen some weapons, right? So You're looking at catering to your superstars, and it seems like Green Bay's trying to make a point that they are bigger than their superstar who's carried them pretty much for the last decade or more. So,
wasn't that the same thing they did with Favre? I mean, honestly, it seems like the mentality they've always had because they got tired of Favre always threatening to retire every offseason, right? I mean, wasn't it the same thing?
Well, yeah, and I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad for Green Bay right now. I feel bad for Aaron Rodgers. I don't blame him at all. I mean, he's wanting to win a Super Bowl, and they're not surrounding him with the type of weapons that the other teams are doing. So I'll hang up and listen.
Okay, thanks for the phone call. Yeah, it is interesting that
Are we basing that on the one pick? Like, I know that's a real easy box to put that in. Well, they need weapons, and they use one pick on a quarterback when it should have been used to be another weapon. I get that.
But that's just
is there something beyond that I'm not seeing?
Well, they haven't drafted a wide receiver in the first round, I think, the entire time he's been there. Like, Aaron Rodgers has only thrown one touchdown pass in his career to a first-round draft pick, and that was Mercedes Lewis, who was taken in the first round of 2006 by another organization. I think that the lacking of an investment in a first-round talent wide receiver when we've seen just an influx of guys getting taken in the first or second round in the last decade and been able to produce instantly is probably where I think that comes more so than just taking Jordan Love in the first round last year.
And okay, that makes some sense, but it's not as if they've been unsuccessful, right? This has been a team that, for the most part, is in the mix every year.
Right, because of whom? And that's the thing.
Right.
He's getting penalized because
But
he's
as
great.
we say, everybody's got question marks. This is a really tough league to be consistent winner in, even if you have the quarterback.
But why
They
is
haven't
it
done
okay
everything
to,
wrong,
to
have they?
prop up your average quarterback, constantly try to prop him up, but you don't want to prop up your Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
But if you quote prop up your quarterback, you probably have, okay, your offense gets a little bit better. But what about, don't you have to have a defense? Like, I can see a philosophy of, we have a quarterback who's going to elevate these guys that we're putting out there with him on offense. Let's utilize our assets and our first-round picks to bolster the defense.
You don't think Tom Brady, honestly, you don't think last year a part of that motivation, I mean, you don't think he never said anything. He did all the right things in New England, but it was clear, man, it felt a lot like Aaron Rodgers, honestly. Just watch his body language, watch the way he acted. I mean, there was real motivation. And I think a lot of that real motivation was to stick it to Bill Belichick. He'll never say that publicly, but I think he wanted to stick it to Belichick. You know why? Was it the same concept? How many first-round receivers did he ever get? Think about it. All the time he had to work with less, but he made more of less. And when they finally traded for Randy Moss, look what their offense did. They explode. They score 50 points a game. They run everybody off the field. They go undefeated in the regular season, and we know how that story ended. They lose in the Super Bowl, but they could have been a team that mopped everybody when he got that star receiver, that Hall of Fame receiver, and they were favorites in games by 24 points, which in the NFL is absurd. Like, a heavy favorite in the NFL is double digits. Like, 11 points is a huge favorite in the NFL. They would be favored in the 20s on teams. You don't think that didn't bother Tom Brady over the years? Like, really? Like, you never address me? You don't ever try to give me big-time weapons when everybody else is doing it for their quarterback? You don't think that affected him? I think it did. He just never said it.
Darren, I think as of 1 minute ago, you're on vacation, aren't you?
Yeah, I did go 60 seconds over, didn't I?
Yeah. You gave us a free minute.
Working overtime.
It's overtime.
Well, I mean, this was a good conversation. So anyway, I got wrapped up in it. Willie, you're going to come back and talk a little bit. I know you're going to bring in Max. You guys are going to discuss a little bit about the regional that's going to be here. Vanderbilt hosting East Carolina, so get ready for that to start the final hour. I'm going to talk to you about round 2 of the basketball playoffs. It's no joke. And everybody, we're trying to figure out who's the contenders, who's the pretenders. And we're kind of seeing that play out right now. DraftKings Sportsbook is putting you courtside with a chance to turn $1 into $100. Now, they're not going to literally put you courtside, but they want you in on all the action. And all you have to do is put up $1 of your money to try to win 100. That's right. That's 100 to 1 odds, just in case you're wondering, on any basketball game. And all you have to do is pick any team that's still in the hunt for the trophy, and that team wins. You win $100 in free credits. It's that easy. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use that promo code 1025GAME, and when you sign up, turn $1 into $100 in free credits. All you have to do is bet on the basketball team of your choice to win their next game, and if they do, you claim $100 in free credits. That promo code again, 1025GAME, for a limited time, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. You must be 21 years of age or older, Tennessee only. Wager paid out in site credits. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789.
And welcome into the final hour of Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on 102.5 The Game, ESPN Radio Nashville. Okay. Moving on to vacation would be 1, Darren McFarland, 2, Chase McCabe. They're out of here. They're gone. They're history for the weekend. They'll be back on Monday. I will press on, press forward without my compadres. But we still got Elijah Campbell in the studio. We have called upon the youngster Max Hers, who has come in for the final hour to get the save. That's what he's looking for. Darren and Chase did not get the complete show. They only went 6 2/3 innings. They're going to need help from the pen. Max, are you with me?
I'm
you
here.
Ready?
I'm here.
Are you warm? You loose?
Very excited to be on my favorite show, Darren, Daunic, or Chase.
I've got the hat. I'm the manager with the hat off, looking to the bullpen. Is the guy ready? Is he ready?
Sweaty brow over there.
That's right.
Coach Willie.
That's right. So with that in mind, we're going to play to Max's strength. A big, big weekend of college baseball coming. The Super Regionals, it's always so much fun, especially at this time of the year where there's less going on. If you're a college fan and your team's in it, it really sort of has you diving in. Of course, here, if you follow the Vanderbilt program, this is sort of an annual thing, it seems like, where every year you're wondering, can they get back there? Can they get back to Omaha? And they've got an opportunity again this year. So let's start there. I know, Max, Tim Corbin just had his weekly, the big media availability leading up to this series against East Carolina. For those that maybe have not followed it, Vanderbilt is going to host East Carolina 2 out of 3 starting on Friday morning at 11 a.m. Friday and Saturday's games scheduled at 11 a.m. Tennessee's got LSU 2 out of 3 over in Knoxville. There is the possibility, if everything works out, that 5 SEC teams could get to Omaha. And Elijah, I think you did the research on this yesterday. That's never happened, right? Never has the SEC or any other conference had 5 of the 8 in Omaha.
Correct. The SEC has gotten 4 teams in on 4 separate occasions, and the ACC did it once, but that's the most any conference has ever sent to Omaha.
So, Max, we asked Tony Vitello, the head coach of Tennessee, earlier today. I asked him, is this the toughest that the SEC has ever been? And he thinks the gap between the SEC and the other conferences, and he says, I don't mean this to be disparaging about any other conference, but he thinks the gap is widening between the SEC and the other Power 5 leagues in college baseball. We've asked Tim Corbin about this. I know you've listened to this conversation. What's your thought on it, Max?
Yeah, I think maybe team 7, 8, and 9 in the SEC are better than ever compared to 7, 8, and 9 in the pack. Maybe in the ACC, too, who was a little, I guess, weak at the top and in the middle this year. But I think there's some good teams that are still in this thing that aren't in the SEC. I think Arizona is really, really good. I think East Carolina is a very good team. I do think the SEC will get at least 4 there again, which has become the norm, but there's going to be some battles. There really could be some battles this weekend, I think. No one's going to go down without a fight, that's for sure. But I think some of these SEC teams, even the ones that are hosting, are going to get pushed to the limit. And to be honest with you, Willie, a week ago today, I was not a Notre Dame baseball believer. I thought my boys from UConn and the Fedco brothers were going to get a couple in their Fedco zone and win that regional up there in South Bend. And Notre Dame dropped a 20-burger on them. So I think Notre Dame could go into Mississippi State and outslug them. So I think a lot of the SEC teams are going to get pushed this weekend, especially the ones that do have injuries.
So you're not thinking it's going to happen, the perfect storm of getting 5. You would say the percentage of that are low.
Yes. Also, I would say it's not a perfect storm because I've seen enough of these teams. I'm ready for Vandy to play somebody else.
Well, we are going to talk about East Carolina a lot here in a little later in the hour for sure, just to give people an idea of what you're talking about when you look at that team, because it is easy to say, well, you got all these powerhouses from the SEC, and you've got East Carolina, who plays in the American Athletic Conference, but that's been a really good program for a good while. We'll get into that a little later. Any theme coming out of Tim Corbin's press conference today that was noteworthy?
The big update really was that Tate Colwick, we still don't know for this weekend. He's got a bruise on the top of his left hand from going into second base, running the bases last weekend. Got hurt on Friday, so they didn't even get a full game in with Young and Colwick up the middle, both back together. So Colwick could play, it seems like. And Willie, you and I talked about this in our podcast we recorded Monday, Anchor Down podcast, which we thought was going to be 45 minutes, ended up being an hour and a half. As we do another hour here, I mean, we could just go all week, you know? Who needs a vacation? Chase McCabe, Darren McFarland.
Yes, we're trying to get a broader audience involved. We know the hardcore Vanderbilt fans could talk about this team for a long time at this time of the year for sure. But and that is a big one, right? Vanderbilt's starting second baseman is iffy, and their starting shortstop has been injured and has come back. So any update on Carter Young? Is he feeling better this week than last week?
Yeah, Corbin actually gave a full evaluation on him, and I believe we have his answer from that, but he kind of evaluated the fielding and the hitting side of things for Carter Young.
I thought he looked good in the field, Robbie. I think at the plate, his swing was just too big. I mean, he's trying to do too much. It's a kid that hasn't played in a while and just trying to get his rhythm back, but he was trying to help the team, and sometimes you overswing, and I thought he did, and I know he thought he did too. But I really liked his last at bat, that right-handed at bat going the other way. But to answer the first part of your question, he is feeling better. We wouldn't have let him go onto the plate hitting right-handed, but he took a couple of days before he was in the cage hitting right-handed. It felt better. I think the biggest thing with him was the finish. If he could get through the finish and feel like he wasn't irritating his shoulder, then he was going to do it. He took BP on the field on Sunday before the game, right-handed, and I said, can you do it? And he goes, I can do it. I said, are you sure you can do it mentally? He goes, I can do it, and I won't be thinking about it. So he did, and I think it was good for him. So I think right now it's full go for both sides.
It almost seems like, Willie, the problem Carter Young had this weekend, especially from the right side, is almost the problem he's had all year, and that it wasn't the injury, just that the swing was too big, and maybe the shoulder hurts him a little bit on the right-handed finish, but it seems like progress is being made. I mean, who knows what they do with him after the season? Is he held out a summer ball for more rest? Probably going to play on the USA Collegiate National Team. That's kind of down the road stuff. But Vandy got what they needed out of him this weekend, and I agree with Coach Corbin. It was pretty much back to normal in the field on the defensive side.
He looked very good in the field on the defensive side. And for, again, those who are not familiar with Vanderbilt's lineup, Carter Young is a very gifted shortstop who is a switch hitter. He injured his shoulder a few weeks ago, popped it out of place, it popped back in. He sat out for a couple weeks, returned for the regional. He looked great on defense, and that is a huge thing. People compare him to guys like Dansby Swanson, which is a huge comparison, but I think it's worthy. He is that good of a defensive player. He's a switch hitter that has power from both sides, but the shoulder was such where, they batted him down in the order, where he usually has been batting second the entire year. He's a huge offensive weapon. He's got, 15 home runs. He's got a huge slugging percentage. He's a big-time weapon. But they didn't think he was ready to hit second. So that's my next question. Max, do you think we'll see him back in his normal spot behind Enrique Bradfield?
That's a good question. And to be honest with you, and we talked about this in the podcast too, if people want to hear even more on this, but if Georgia Tech had won that game Monday morning and forced a winner-take-all game Monday night at Hawkins Field, I think not only would Tate Colwick have been back in that game playing second base, I think Young would have been back in the two-hole in the lineup. I think they go back to plan A, even if it's with a couple of guys who aren't 100% to do their plan A.
So we'll look for that in the opener on Friday. Let's take a pause here. When we come back, we'll talk about the opponent in East Carolina. And then a little later in the hour, we'll go through the matchups in the SEC. If you're just an SEC fan or you're Mississippi State, an LSU, Tennessee, Ole Miss, all of those teams are still alive and vying for those spots to get in to Omaha. Arkansas, of course, being the number one overall seed. They had a little scare, but they got through, and they'll be hosting as well. So we'll get a little taste of that a little later in the hour. Next segment, we'll talk East Carolina Pirates, what they bring to the table coming out of the American Athletic Conference. Stay tuned. We're coming back with more of Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Omaha, Nebraska is the target of the College World Series. Back after a dark year last year. No College World Series. Tough one in 2020, as we know. So Vanderbilt, by that, is the defending champion still from 2019. They are looking to get back to Omaha for a fifth time under Tim Corbin. 2011, lost in the Final Four. 2014, champions. 2015, one game away from a second championship, lost in the final game to Virginia. And then in 2019, won the championship. 2 out of 3 over Michigan. So here they are against East Carolina. We've got LSU against Tennessee, Mississippi State against Notre Dame. Remind me, Ole Miss and Arkansas. Who do they have, Max?
Arkansas has NC State.
That's right.
And Ole Miss has Arizona.
Very interesting matchups there. We'll get to those a little bit later. But now let's focus in on East Carolina, the Pirates. Not Max Herz's beloved Pittsburgh Pirates, where he grew up, his hometown team, but the East Carolina Pirates. We don't know much about them, probably, if you're a SEC fan, but tell us what they bring to the table.
First of all, I want to give Elijah a big shout-out for taking my request and playing the college baseball anthem, the eternal college baseball anthem, Omaha, Nebraska, by the great band Bowling for Soup, most famous for 1985, and some other things, including the Jimmy Neutron theme song and the Phineas and Ferb theme song, as Elijah points out. But they wrote that song at ESPN's request as the TV anthem for the 2005 College World Series, and they said they wrote it in 5 minutes.
It's a hit.
It is a certified platinum college baseball anthem. And they did play it in Omaha 2 years ago at an inning break at a 9 a.m. game where there was no one there except me, and I loved it. I loved it. To answer your question, Willie, so ECU comes in with 2 pretty solid frontline arms. Gavin Williams is really the main guy. Senior, he will start the first game of the series opposite of Kamar Rocker on Friday night, and this will be a rare game when Kamar Rocker is not the largest pitcher starting the game. Williams is 6'6", 238. Tim Corbin compared him to Paul Bunyan earlier today, so we already have him just being turned into a tall tale on us here.
He's got 117 strikeouts and 19 walks in 74 innings. That's pretty impressive, and especially for a big guy like that.
The thing from Coach Corbin that I've heard him say twice now, he said on Robbie and Rextra this morning, he said again in the press conference, is their study of his film is he does not lose his velocity as the game goes on, and he's not just mid-90s, he is high 90s. So he will buzz you all game. I mean, he'll go 96, 97, 98 is what they're expecting as the game goes on, and ECU has built him up. It's a similar kind of season by season, week by week to what he's done, and he doesn't normally go beyond 7 innings, but also he doesn't normally go beyond 100 pitches. So it'll be interesting to see what they call upon him to do. They did switch Williams and their number 2 guy, sophomore left-hander Carson Wisenhunt, who I tried to find any relation to Ken Wisenhunt. I don't think they're related, sadly. Sorry, Willie. I know you were rooting for that one there.
Oh, I think Darren in particular would have been rooting for that one. But
it looks like a no.
I did think that. I did wonder that when I saw the name on the back of the jersey.
It does look like a no. But they switched their 1 and 2 starters last week for the regional because they had Norfolk State as the 4, who's one of probably the 2 or 3 weaker teams in the tournament. So they went Wisenhunt that game, then went Williams against Charlotte on Saturday. He went 6 innings, gave up 5 runs on 7 hits. I mean, he got hit pretty hard in that game, came out after 6 innings. So it'll be interesting to see what goes down, but none of their wins were emphatic last week. They went 3-0, but their wins were 8-5, 7-5, and 9-8. They played every team in their regional once. Maryland was the team they had to beat in the regional final once. Maryland would have had to beat them twice. They won on the first try, but the top of the lineup is where their money's at. Their leadoff man, Connor Norby, junior second baseman, he's hitting .418. He's the first guy in college baseball this year to 100 hits, with exactly 100 in 59 games.
All right, so give me this, because everybody's going to wonder, Max, that you see these numbers, right? They're impressive. How would you rate their level of competition compared to the SEC? Let's start with the conference. The American Athletic Conference, you see teams like UCF, you see Wichita State, Cincinnati. These are programs that have had a lot of success, particularly Wichita State's got a rich tradition, as we know. But how strong is that league this year?
I think it was actually only a 2-bid league. And ECU was the only team that didn't win the title that got in, if I'm not mistaken. And it was South Florida, who was one of the last teams in the league, who ended up stealing a bid. Earlier this year, Vandy saw Memphis, and Memphis's catcher Hunter Goodman is going to be a first-round pick next month. I thought Memphis was solid. They had a bad season in the American. Wichita State is down right now. I thought Tulane was good. They didn't end up really having a chance to get in. Houston's fallen off a little bit. So just to look at their schedule, I mean, if we're going to look at it that way, I'm not crazy about it, but they had a tough region. I thought Charlotte and Maryland both had a very good chance to win that region, and that's a regular season rematch, too. ECU swept Charlotte back in March in their final non-conference series, so they had a tougher regional than Vanderbilt did. I think Georgia Tech was solid, but I think Vanderbilt had a much easier draw the first week, and now things get upped a little bit, but they're the 13 seed out of the 16 hosts. I think that's fair. I think they were seeded well. I think you could make an argument they're the 13th best team.
So what else from Coach Coburn on ECU?
Let's hear it, Elijah.
His kids are very, very tough. They're very disciplined. They're tough to put away, and they've been in these environments for the better part of, the last 4 or 5 years. They've been on the kind of the brink of going to Omaha. So now you're starting to see a program that, I know what that feels like. You know, we did that in 2007, and then all of a sudden you start knocking on the door enough, then you barge the door down, and that makes this situation very difficult for Vanderbilt, regardless of who we've got. I know what they've got.
So he's kind of putting it in Vanderbilt's terms here. This is the year that ECU wants to break through. They have the most NCAA baseball tournament appearances ever without getting in the College World Series. They've been in 30 times. And in Supers in 2016 and 2019 and a couple of times before that, before Cliff Godwin was the head coach. But they're close. And, I mean, if they can get a couple of key pitching guys to give them innings in key spots or maybe even a start in key spots beyond those first 2 starters, they got a chance to take 2 out of 3 against Vandy if they can hit against either Rocker or Leiter.
I perused their roster, but it was not a deep dive. And I did see that there's a guy from my high school on the East Carolina roster.
Really? I did not see that.
Yes. Winter Park Wildcat. He was not there for 4 years. He was only there his senior year, and, of course, that got shortened because of the COVID. But that aside, I was looking for a theme that's a big part of college baseball this year, and that is players returning for an extra year, right? Last year didn't count. And there were not a lot of guys drafted. It was only 5 rounds. So you had guys that would normally get drafted after their junior year. So you have an older group. Is East Carolina in that category in your opinion, Max? Because
no, I don't think so.
Vanderbilt is relatively young compared to a lot of teams. A little bit of happenstance, but they had a very older team in 2019. So this is still a pretty young group. So East Carolina is not in your thought?
Yeah, I don't think so. The only guy who really stands out to me is someone who would have been drafted last year who wasn't, and this is a name that jumps out at me every time just because of how good he was before the season got shut down last year, is Jake Kuchmaner, who's a left-handed starter who I guess this year is their number 3 guy. We'll see if we see him on Sunday. I'm trying to find out, did he start that 3rd game last week against Maryland? He did. He only went 2 innings. So they staff dayed that one. But Kuchmaner last year as a junior in 2020 really made a name for himself. He no-hit Ole Miss in a midweek game. And then his next start against another Power 5 team, he was 2 outs away from a no-hitter. So he's got big game stuff. He's the type of lefty that Vandy may struggle with or historically has struggled with, but despite the no-hitter last season, he has not had a good year this year. So that's really the only guy who stands out to me.
When we come back, we're going to talk about the big dudes, Rocker and Leiter, and what's going on for them this weekend. We know the draft is coming up a little later than normal. Normally, it would be right around now that the draft would be happening. But, of course, there's a format change. And we'll talk about them as they, again, try to take center stage and lead the way in a 2 out of 3, which is a very different not very different, but it is a slightly different format than the regional format and what it would be in Omaha. So it's a unique thing, a straight up 2 out of 3 in the Super Regional. Stay tuned. We're coming back with more. This is our Super Regional preview. In our last segment, we'll hit the other ones: LSU, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas in their matchups. Stay tuned. We're coming back with more on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Final segment here of Darren, Daunic, and Chase on this Wednesday. Stillman and Co. coming up at 2 o'clock. Max Hurst is with me, and we are previewing the Super Regional. It is Vanderbilt and East Carolina. We'll hit on a couple of the other ones as well a little bit later in the hour. But Max, of course, anybody who is just casually aware of the Vanderbilt program, they probably know two guys, and two guys only, Kamar Rocker and Jack Leiter, who are expected to be in the top 5 picks somewhere in there when the Major League Baseball draft happens. This will be their final year at Vanderbilt. There's no question about it. They've been under the microscope really from the start of the season, and even going back last year in the brief time, every time they pitched, it was a noteworthy thing. But when you're draft eligible, there's extra scrutiny. Remember, people are coming from, or people just able to travel again have come from a long way out to see them live. So tell me what you see with that in the backdrop as they get ready to take the mound this weekend.
I just first want to say that PK Subban is joining ESPN as an NHL analyst, so that's very exciting. According to Andrew Marchand from the New York Post. So
while he's still playing, I'm assuming.
He will debut tonight on SportsCenter.
Oh, I see. As a
I guess for the playoffs. That's pretty cool.
Now that his team is out. Okay.
So shout out PK. I miss seeing him on Demumbrian. I miss that guy.
Yes.
So
no question.
To answer your question again, Willie, Kamar Rocker and Jack Leiter, it doesn't seem to affect them, which is impressive. I think the only thing that has brought them both down at any point this year is just a little bit of fatigue hurdles they've had to get over. Rocker's a junior. His first 2 years, he had a stretch kind of right at the turn of February, March, where he lost his velo and had some soreness. And the last 2 years, it cost him an outing. Last year, it cost him a start. He missed his second to last start of the year before COVID stopped the season. Now this year, he's able to pitch through it, but his velocity is down. He just kind of called it a dead arm period. It's a regular kind of mid-season drop down. And it's weird to say that it's mid-season in March, but he threw all fall in September, October, November, and then he starts ramping back up again in January with the plan of being done sometime in June. So that really is kind of the early middle part of it, and that's when it hit him. His fastball was sitting right around 90 instead of at 94, 95. Everything was moving slower. Some things were moving less. Everyone's freaking out. He's no longer the number 1 pick. And it's weird because the same people who freak out over that velocity drop haven't moved him back up into their top 5s yet. And Kylie McDaniel from ESPN, who's their draft writer now, that Keith Law moved to The Athletic, he even suggested one time that he's going to pull a Mark Appel and come back because he's fallen so far, which I think is absolutely ludicrous. And I still think both deserve to go in the top 3 or 4. I don't know anything about the high school shortstops they're competing with. Jordan Lawler, one of them, is committed to Vandy. Obviously, it's unlikely he comes. He will almost definitely get drafted and sign. But I think these guys are both sure thing major leaguers. I think Jack Leiter is the highest floor prospect I've seen in my 8 years covering Vanderbilt, and it honestly isn't really even close. I think the worst case scenario for Jack Leiter is a 10-year late inning reliever, multi-inning reliever, super reliever, Andrew Miller, whatever you want to call it. I think that is the bare minimum for Jack Leiter in the major leagues. I think these guys are absolute sure thing major leaguers, health assumed, of course, but they've shown that even when they're not at full health, or if they get a week off like Leiter did along the way this year, they both can come back and be just back at 100% and ready to go.
You made an interesting point because when you're talking about drafting a guy, you're projecting them for the next 10 years, the next 15 years. So it's not necessarily how did your last start go. But, of course, for Vanderbilt and the task at hand, it is important to kind of track how is their stuff playing right now. Are they coming around? As you said, Kamar Rocker, you played the clip in the podcast this week, the Anchor Down podcast, which is available. Right, and I know you're going to have another one that has more of a deep dive into the East Carolina roster coming up later this week in preparation for the series. But Kamar Rocker's quote to ESPN after the Presbyterian start is coming off the loss against Arkansas. He was, what did he say? He was pissed off all week.
He was pissed off the entire week.
Because he didn't pitch well. Guy. He didn't pitch well in that game.
I love Kamar Rocker.
Now, this is a guy that won in Knoxville. He beat Mississippi State in a dominant performance. So he's had big performances this year for sure. He's had an excellent year. But he has looked human, right? He did lose at Ole Miss. He lost to Arkansas. So it's not like for example, in comparison, David Price went through the entire SEC season in 2007 and did not lose the Friday night start. That was incredible, right? So Kumar Rocker has been human, but I'm just wondering if he's ready to peak at the right time. We know his track record in the 2019.
He is 1-for-1 peaking at the right time.
Yeah.
And Tim Corbin was asked a good question today in the press conference by Adam Sparks from the Tennessee Inn that led him down a pretty interesting road comparing and contrasting freshman Rocker, who threw the no-hitter, with current junior Rocker. I thought it was a really good answer.
I think to that start, Adam, when I look at that start, there was so much innocence to it because it was a kid that was pitching that I don't think he even recognized how much was on the line. I don't think he even recognized what was surrounding that game. I felt like he was just an innocent kid that was out there competing to the best of his ability, to your point, with basically 2 pitches. And once he found that the hitters were going to move to certain pitches, then he just kept repeating them. I think what happens now as you become more of a commodity, you become more scouted. You become very focused on. I mean, there's a lot of coaches and a lot of hitters that probably spend hours and hours of time on Synergy watching Kumar and just trying to break him down and trying to look for tells and trying to look for moments and trying to look at his breaking ball. And I think you just become more of a known commodity where it's not that you have to reinvent yourself, but you continually have to look for ways to get better. Your skill set get better. Your movement of your pitches are better. You just have to become more of a professional. And I think that's what he's doing. He's learned a lot in time, and certainly learned a lot about how to slow the ball down, because that's something that you have to do as a pitcher, because as you move up into levels, velocity just doesn't do it anymore unless it's commanded really well and unless it has some type of spin rate to it or angle to it that makes it very difficult for the hitters to barrel.
I think, Willie, that sums up 2019 Rocker versus 2021 Rocker pretty well. He's got more, but is that going to help him out as everybody's gone through it? There's tons of video on him using his full 4-pitch mix now. Everybody wants a piece of this guy, as opposed to that Duke game where the slider that he found in that game hit a new level. That was basically debuting a new pitch that no one had any ability to scout. And we've still seen that pitch be incredibly effective for 3 more years, but you kind of know what it looks like. You still have to kind of close your eyes and swing on it, but you've seen it. So is one of the best teams going to be able to get a hold of him, or is he still going to be dominant?
And what is the factor that East Carolina hasn't seen him? Like, we know in the SEC, as Tim Corbin pointed out, this is one of the great things about surviving and thriving in that league is, they've seen him. They're watching him. They gear up. There's that series that if you catch it on SEC Network on the inside look at Ole Miss, I forget what they call it, but they have a scouting report on Rocker and Leiter. They bring you inside and they talk about how you have to try to beat them. They spend a lot of time. How are we going to go about trying to find a way to compete with these guys? You can't back down. All of that. You're in the spotlight, but that only makes you better, right? Competitors like Leiter and Rocker, they thrive on that. They strive to get better. So you got a guy that has 4 pitches as opposed to 2 years ago. But I'm just curious with East Carolina. They haven't seen him. So what advantage could that be for Rocker?
Yeah, I think it could help. You can't really simulate this. Even the teams like Vandy that are using VR at this point to put their opposing starters' pitchers into a VR headset and stare at them the day before they face them. You still don't. I mean, that slider he's thrown, it just falls off the table. It goes from tabletop to bouncing off a leg in an instant, a moment. And you got to know that pitch is coming, and you better not swing at it. So will they get a chance to see him 3 or 4 times? Is that enough to make progress? That's just kind of the back-and-forth battle that makes this fun.
Well, let's now focus on Leiter for a moment. He's going to be in Game 2. For people that didn't follow week to week, you may have heard about the no-hitter he threw. He came back the next week in the second week of the league and no-hit the team for 7 innings and got taken out. So his first 16 innings, he did not allow a hit in the SEC. A week or two later, against LSU, down at LSU, he made them look like a bunch of little leaguers for about 4 or 5 innings. He was so dominant. But then he hit a patch, Max, that didn't go very well. He started giving up some home runs. He actually took a week off just to rest and regroup. So where do you see him right now as he's gone through this arc of his season?
The sentiment from the coaches, especially Vandy's pitching coach Scott Brown, is that the week off worked. It gave them exactly what they needed, and he was able to not only rest up, but just reset in terms of his approach, things like that, knowing what he's going after, and kind of harness everything that was giving him his best stuff earlier in the season. His fastball had a lot of late life running arm side for him, so in on right-handed batters and running away from left-handed batters. It was described as exploding when it crossed the plate, that late movement at the last possible second, and that's how he struck out everybody against South Carolina in the no-hitter. They were all on that pitch, because even though it's a fastball and even though you know it's going to be a strike in the zone, you still got to cut at it, and you still can't get it. It was unbelievable what he was doing with the fastball, and he had lost that, and then all of a sudden the fastball's playing flatter, it's getting drilled. So that week off has given him his best fastball back, really, is what it is, and he had the curveball working really well last Saturday when he pitched 6 innings against Georgia Tech, struck out 11 guys. I think he's really back to full strength, and when they sat him, people were, again, the draft writers are going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, Jack Leiter's hurt. Jack Leiter can't go in the top 5 anymore. And even 1 week off was all he needed to get right back, and that's why he's, I don't want to say pro because they always describe Rocker as a pro, but he's almost more of a robot even. He's automatic. I mean, he has been programmed to pitch. The man won't even high-five you with his pitching hand. That's the money hand. Don't high-five Jack Leiter's right hand.
So he listened to Crash Davis on that one.
Yeah.
Took it a step further.
He is in every way just right back on the top of his game. It's unbelievable.
Who would be the number 3 starter if it goes 3?
That's what we don't know. And Tim Corbin was asked specifically about Christian Little today, who we didn't see this weekend, but Corbin confirmed what we 99.9% already knew, which is Little was the starter for a possible winner-take-all Game 7 if Georgia Tech had won on Sunday night / Monday morning. So they got options. Could they bring in Pat Riley in relief the first 2 days if they need him? I think everyone will be available. And I think if they have a reason to use either Christian Little or Pat Riley, the 2 freshmen who are the options for the number 3 game, if they have a reason to use either of them before that, they won't hesitate. And then to bring somebody back, even though Little hasn't pitched in a couple of weeks, his last start was so good, and his schedule has been so erratic this year, going in between midweeks to 1 start on the weekend, a couple of weeks where he didn't pitch at all and was changing some things. I think he can come back on a moment's notice.
And has Little turned 18 yet?
July 5th.
He's closing in, but he's still not 18.
He was born at the end of Tim Corbin's first season at Vanderbilt. July 5th, 2003. And my favorite stat of the entire Vanderbilt baseball season this year, he faced 5 hitters who were more than 6 full years older than him this year, who had an extra year of COVID eligibility.
Christian Little, for those that don't know, graduated early from high school out of St. Louis to try to start his clock earlier. He's a very, very highly rated recruit, kind of a unique situation. So he is pitching as a 17-year-old. He's an immense talent, but obviously very young. But he is certainly in the picture here as they go into this weekend. All right, Max, let's focus on, in the last 5 minutes here, let's bump around to the other super regionals that involve SEC teams. Let's start with Arkansas. They got pushed to the brink. They're in Game 7 of their regional against Nebraska. The score is tied 2-2 with 2 outs and nobody on in the bottom of the 8th inning. And for a team as dominant as they were, that's a little bit surprising. But their Superman, Mr. Cops, call the cops, he was amazing. He pitched in 3 games, including 70 pitches on Saturday and over 80 pitches on Monday, and just bailed him out of there, and they survived. Is this guy got a rubber arm? Is there any concern about fatigue there?
He basically threw a super on his own last weekend over 3 separate games. It's unbelievable. Yeah, he threw 7 innings of relief in that one game. It's incredible. And I mean, he wasn't even close to getting hit. Nobody was touching him. It's kind of the same thing with Rocker's slider the first postseason through. Nobody can figure it out. Even if you know it's coming, you're still going to think it's a fastball, and you're still going to go for it.
So Arkansas would be a heavy favorite against NC State.
Yes.
Especially with the atmosphere that they create there. They've been the best team all year long. You've got to heavily favor them. LSU, Tennessee. LSU has come a long way. They really struggled at the beginning of the season. We talked to Tony Vitello about them earlier. Now, remember, they had to go all the way out to Oregon. They played deep into the night on Monday. They fly all the way across the country, past Baton Rouge. I don't know if they even stopped home in Baton Rouge. I guess they did for a couple of days. But they go over to Knoxville, and they got to beat Tennessee 2 out of 3. That seems like a tall order.
So my initial pick in my bracket that I filled out was Oregon to go to Tennessee and Oregon to beat Tennessee in Supers and get to Omaha. So I will stick with the portion of that pick that's left and go with LSU here.
Really?
Just
the Paul Maneri,
you got to ride the
intangible?
Maneri magic, yeah.
Yeah.
But how was Tony V? I didn't get a chance to listen. Did he argue balls and strikes with you?
Live wire. He was fun. He's obviously extremely excited. I invite you to go, if you want to find it on our podcast form, go to our website. You subscribe to Darren, Daunic, and Chase. You can hear our interview with Tony Vitello. Very engaging. Lets his players do their thing. There's a lot of emotion.
I told Elijah to be careful calling him for the interview because he tends to argue every call. So maybe that extends to phone calls.
Oh, as well. A little shade thrown that way. But yes, he's not afraid to show the emotions in a lot of different ways, for sure.
None of these SEC coaches are. It seems like all of a sudden, who would have believed this 10 years ago, but Tim Corbin is like the most calmest in-game SEC coach.
It does seem that way. He picks his spots on how he goes about it. He's not as fiery as some of the other coaches. Speaking of that, all right, let's go. You mentioned Notre Dame. A little bit of a surprise. Teams north of the Mason-Dixon line are rare in terms of hosting regionals. They're in the ACC, which is, a little bit, but you don't see teams that far north as good as Notre Dame. But do they have enough to go down to Starkville and win?
That'll be interesting. Like I said on Notre Dame, I did not think they were for real, and then they destroyed UConn, who I thought was very, very good. That was kind of like the all-northern regional, like the northern champion, Michigan up there, Notre Dame, and Connecticut. And Notre Dame decisively won that. Michigan went 2-0. That was a big surprise. They lost to Central Michigan in the losers bracket game there. I don't think they have enough to beat Mississippi State, but if they do, it's going to be with offense. So if Notre Dame's able to keep those games close, they are going to be fun to watch.
I still like State there, though. I like their team. A lot of good arms on that team. And Ole Miss, they're not at home. They don't get to play down there where they get the showers. They throw the drinks up in the air when you hit home run. They've got to go on the road.
That's right. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, Arizona's good. I had not seen Arizona play at all this year until last weekend. Every single bit and piece I saw of their regional last week, I was very, very impressed with them. They had Oklahoma State in their regional, who I thought was a very good team, and they won it decisively. They got a big complete game on Saturday night, so I don't know. I think Arizona's got a chance to hold serve at home, but the Ole Miss merry band of psycho pitchers, who I absolutely love. I love those guys. They could go down to the desert and get a little wonky.
So you're saying the guy for Virginia that was talking about the Dippin' Dots dilemma,
yes,
he would fit right in on that
yes.
team?
Well, hey, the best part about that was there were so many rainouts, they ended up staying there for like 6 days, so he got 6 days of per diem. And then, because they can't host because of the COVID rules, they're staying in Columbia for another week. So Stephen Schock is going to end up with like 16 days of per diem to spend on Dippin' Dots.
Right. If you want to go online, you'll find this clip. It was a funny thing. This Virginia reliever was challenged by the South Carolina fans. If you blow it, we'll give you free Dippin' Dots. And he said he weighed it in his mind, hey, good offer, but if I beat you, I get an extra day of per diem so I can afford my own Dippin' Dots. So pretty good logic.
Incredible.
That was good stuff. Max, well done. I know you'll be very busy. Tell us about the podcast going into the series.
Yeah, thanks, Willie. Anchor Down Podcast. It'll be, as always, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher here on 102.5. Chase, have a nice vacation. Darren, take care of Chase on vacation.
All right, that's coming up. And, of course, Mark Howard will be hosting with me tomorrow and Friday. So we'll have more to get you ready for that. Of course, Friday, the game will be going on. At least the Vanderbilt game will. We'll have all the coverage of the Super Regionals for sure. And at 11 a.m., Vanderbilt, East Carolina will be underway. That will be something to watch. You know I'll have one eye on a TV screen somewhere as I host with Mark. In the meantime, let's send it to Jared and company. That's coming up next here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.